of her project is the role of early life stress and cognitive dysfunction among persons living with HIV. And her special fact was that she loves houseplants and at one point had 150 in her oxygen-rich home. This summer, she created a small business selling many of them to simplify, with plans to save up to visit South Korea for the food, culture, and to learn Korean.
Thank you again, Sheila, for the introduction. Did you know that San Francisco has among the largest populations of people living with HIV in the US? HIV stands for human immunodeficiency virus and is symbolized by the red ribbon on the left. HIV also remains a global health issue worldwide, and my mentor, Dr. Felicia Chow, and I desire to understand with our primary aim how early life stress or childhood trauma impacts cognitive function in people living with HIV. We measured early life stress through the questionnaire Adverse Childhood Experiences, or ACEs, which can include abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction. And as it turns out, ACEs are very common in people living with HIV, and combined early life stress with HIV status can lead to worse cognition, including deficits in learning and memory. We analyzed data collected for the EPIC Neuro sub-study, which explores cardiovascular risk in people living with HIV, and we investigated the participants' completed ACEs questionnaire and patient health questionnaire, or PHQ-9, a measure of depression for the secondary aim of our study, where we explored if depression will correlate with early life stress and be associated with worse cognition. We also analyzed neuropsychological test data, and here on the right, we're looking at the trails making test, where participants match the numbered dots as quickly as they can. And to get a sense of our demographics, we had 53 participants, and our study was comprised of primarily men and white participants with highly controlled HIV, referring to the CD4 count. HIV infects and destroys CD4 cells, which are really important for our immune system and help us to fight off infection. And so it's really important that people living with HIV have a healthy CD4 count. And all of our participants are on antiretroviral therapy and virally suppressed. And to switch gears to our table 2, which is really the meat of our results, here we're looking at associations between global cognitive performance and early life stress and depression. And the global cognitive performance is a combination of all the data gathered for the neuropsychological tests. And the p-values highlighted in yellow are statistically significant. So for our primary aim, we did find that greater early life stress is associated with worse cognition. And when we adjusted for depression, we still saw a statistically significant relationship. So in other words, we found associations between early life stress and cognitive dysfunction independent of depression. In terms of our secondary aim, we did not find a significant relationship between depression and worse cognition, and actually found a weak association between depression and early life stress. For limitations, a couple of our main limitations include that, for one, our study is cross-sectional, and therefore it's a snapshot of the present moment. And in order to conclude any causality, we'll need future longitudinal studies to understand if early life stress causes cognitive decline. And also, for more generalizability, we will need to recruit more participants, and specifically more participants from diverse race, ethnicity, and gender expression backgrounds. And the goal of our research is to identify people for therapeutic interventions to mitigate cognitive dysfunction, as interventions may help cognitive performance. And some of these interventions can include ACEs screening practices to further identify targets, resilience building workshops for youth, and also teaching young people about coping strategies. I also created educational infographics for my local organization, the Diversity Center in Santa Cruz, and the San Francisco LGBT Center, as HIV disproportionately affects the LGBTQ community. And I hope that my bilingual resources can offer some intervention and possibly prevention, and helping to build resilience as well. And thank you to my audience, and a special thank you to the Corey SSRP leadership and my spectacular mentor, Dr. Chow, for a truly remarkable summer. Thank you.
Fantastic. All right, group 5, you are up with questions for Danissa. What you got for her? Vanessa?
Yeah, could you explain more about kind of what the trailing numbers, it was the one where they count the numbers and they follow it around, how that worked and what participants had to do for that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Vanessa. Did you mean this right here?
Yeah, that one, the trails making, thank you.
Yes, that's a great question. So the reason that I included this, essentially just like I thought that the trails making test would be a really easy type of like visual to understand examples of our neuropsychological tests, since so basically how this test works is that it's timed, and as you can see, the participants are matching all these numbered dots as quickly as they can, and the score, from what I understand, is based on how long it takes someone to complete the test. And it looks like on average that would be like 29 seconds. And basically the point is that we're seeing, for one, how like we're testing the participants' attention and ability to basically solve this problem through thinking and reasoning. And if you have any family members that have dementia, for example, this might be something that they have encountered before. And I just, I think it's a very like easy to follow example of our tests, and it's one of many. There were quite a few neuropsychological tests that our participants underwent. And thanks for your question.
Maybe one more, and since I don't see any other hands up, let me ask you then, what do you think is a mechanism behind early life stress and its relationship to cognition?
Yes, amazing question. I think that, ultimately what we're focusing on is the trauma aspect of, for example, I'm going to actually show you some example questions on the ACEs questionnaire, just so everyone can get a sense of how the early life stress is being measured. I mean, I am not an expert, but I feel like trauma does really impact how our brains work. And for a much more expert opinion, I would definitely ask my mentor, Dr. Chow. But as we know now, more with like trauma-informed care, that's becoming more of a like standard practice in medicine. I think there's a lot more awareness that there's many different effects of early life stress, whether it affects cognition, like you mentioned, or other long-term outcomes like chronic diseases. So that's probably a very indirect way of answering your question, but that's the best I have.
Interesting. All right. We'll chat about it more at your poster.